How would you feel if you had to constantly prove that your work was valuable despite your origins? And can a symphonic piece be a political statement against rising racist ideologies? All of this and more coming right up on Conducting Pills. Hi, I'm Gianmaria Griglio, I'm a conductor and a composer, and welcome to this episode of Conducting Pills, a series where we take a repertoire piece or a part of it and we analyze it from a conductor's point of view. In this episode, we'll go through the first movement of Dvořák 7 Symphony, its structure, its phrasing, and of course, we'll have some technical tips. As usual, you can jump through different sections of the video by clicking on the links present in the description below. And now, let's begin! To understand the origins of Dvořák 7 Symphony, we need to understand the time in which it was written. The Austrian-Hungarian Empire in the 1880s was plagued by wars of cultures, something that would become a weapon in the hands of the rising ethnic activists. Nothing really new actually. For a long time the empire had gone through tensions of various kinds with the Czech lands, and Czech people were often regarded as second-rate citizens. Dvořák was caught in the middle of all of this. Despite the help he was continuously receiving by a real German, one by the name of Johannes Brahms, his being Czech got in the way of his international recognition more than once. Brahms was responsible for Dvořák's first international success, having passed his publisher, the Moravian Duets, in 1875. And this brought Dvořák a commission for the first set of Slavonic dances. However, this was not enough for Dvořák. He did not want to be identified simply as a composer of catchy dance tunes. He wanted to enter the Olympus of composer and get the same recognition that Mozart and Beethoven had. There was also a political dimension to this. The increasing racist trends were ever more trying to demonstrate the alleged superiority of the German people. It was somewhat believed that you could become German as long as you were educated as a German and adopted the German language and customs. That was considered a process through which the authentic Germans could civilize the Slavic people. As it's easy to imagine, this kind of thinking gave way to much bigger racist thoughts. Dvořák set himself to change the course of this, or at least to try. His ambition was to be recognized as a serious composer of a serious German genre, the symphony, thus demonstrating that a Slavic composer could be as good as a German one. And this was what his Sixth Symphony was designed for. But the politicization of society went on increasing, pervading the cultural world with its ideologies, and the premiere of the Sixth Symphony in Vienna was dropped. The Sixth got its premiere in Prague and then was brought to London to an enormous success. And the result was a commission by the London Philharmonic Society for a new symphony in 1884. You can imagine how prestigious it was for Dvořák to receive such a commission. He determined that his new symphony would be more perfect than anything he had ever written before, more refined, more grandiose. And the German people would surely have to acknowledge that the Czech composer could be as good as a German one. On the first page of the manuscript, Dvořák wrote, "This main theme occurred to me upon the arrival at the station of the ceremonial train from Pest in 1884. On that train, Czechs were traveling from Hungary to Prague for a performance at the National Theatre, and the performance was followed by a pro-Czech political demonstration." The structure is a typical sonata form, an exposition with two contrasting themes, a development, a recapitulation, and a coda. The first theme is deep and dark. The cellos and violas take the lead at the end of the second bar, but the atmosphere is set by a rumbling pedal of basses, horns, and timpani. The idea is repeated by the clarinets, punctuated by the horn. But look at how masters work. Dvořák takes the last cell of the theme and makes a slight rhythmic variation. And just from that, he acquires a new element that will come back times and again throughout the entire movement. The strings bridge using those same rhythmic figures in a dramatic episode filled with stop and go, like this one. Notice also the hemiolas, so typical of the Czech music, blending the bar lines and trampling the regularity of the meter. The drama intensifies, violas and oboe, then second violins and oboe, then first and second violins. They all play off an element that we've already heard, an acephalous sextuplet of sixteenths. Notice the orchestration. Violas are usually paired with clarinets to get a darker sound, but here they're playing in their up register doubled by a single oboe. Dvořák doesn't want a warm sound here, he wants a poignant one. And then there's a transformation. That sextuplet becomes a lovely pastoral idea in the hands of a solo horn in dialogue with a solo oboe. It's a brief moment. The rhythmic elements return, overlapping each other. And we're back with the first theme, this time with the full orchestra weight. The horn with the now very familiar cell introduces us to a transition, which leads us to the second theme. Between bar 65 and 70, make a little bit of a push and pull. Move the tempo slightly and catch your rallentando a little bit before its marking. It will allow the phrase to breathe better, giving it a certain direction and making the rallentando more effective. And remain in 2 until 1 bar before letter D. Depending on how much rallentando you want, you can subdivide this bar in its whole or just in the second half. But make sure that the tempo relationship stays consistent. The last 8th note in the rallentando should equal a dotted quarter in the following bar. Now the second theme in a lyrical and spacious B-flat major is sung by the flutes and clarinets. And then picked up by the first violins. There's a slight rallentando before their entrance, by the way. And look at what Dvořák uses as a counterpoint in this passage. That same acephalous sextuplet we've already encountered. And with the added bonus of a trill in the flute, this makes now everything very tranquil and serene. While the second theme dies away, the first theme resurfaces, in fragments at first, and then in full. The second theme is expanded in full orchestra, leading to the end of the exposition. And at this point, we expect a formal repeat. But notice the rhythmic cell now expanded to 2 8 notes. Instead of going to a repeat, Dvořák uses this element to quietly plunge the music into the development. And look who's up first, the second theme, now presented in B minor. Then is the first theme's time. And all the elements come back, tossed around and transform in this tumultuous development. Look at how the first theme is fragmented in this passage, for example. It's a fragment, then a smaller one, then an even smaller one. And the development continues, growing and growing, and it climaxes right into the recapitulation. It's a condensed version of what we've already heard, and we're swiftly taken to the second theme in D major this time. The recapitulation develops into a violent coda, pushed even further by an accelerando. The familiar sextuplets become increasingly important, and at one point they get disrupted into emiolas. It's really important here not to lose control, or even worse, go with the emiolas. And there's a trick to that which has the bonus of not destroying the sound. Once you've initiated the fortissimo, keep it small. And 1 bar after letter O, keep it even smaller. Nobody's going to drop the dynamics here. The rhythm will be tight, and once you get to bar 280, you'll still have enough room to make a fortissimo without making the sound harsh. The sextuplet is retaken by the violas doubled by the horns in the final fortissimo. Now, given the premises, we would maybe expect the ending to be loud and majestic, but Dvořák saves that for the last movement of the symphony. The coda fades away with the final appearance of the first theme, and all is left afterward is a shred of the rhythmic cell in 16 making its way in the lower register of the cellos on a rumbling timpani pedal in D, just like the opening. The London premiere of this symphony was undoubtedly one of the great successes in Dvořák's career. But in spite of this, when the symphony finally had its premiere in Vienna in 1887, it was met with a cool reception. Hans Richter, who conducted the Vienna performance, wrote to Dvořák, "The symphony was not appreciated as much as I had hoped. Our philharmonic audiences are often, well, peculiar to say the least." That same symphony is now considered one of Dvořák's best works all around. It took some time, but his message finally got through. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel by clicking on the subscribe button right below the video and ring the bell so you will get notified every time a new video comes out. Let me know in the comments what you think about this piece and if you have any suggestions for future videos. And I will see you next week with another episode of Conducting Pills when we will talk about Silvestre Revuelta's Senza Maya. Till then, bye bye.